For today, we're going to be talking about The Last of Us 2 remake / remaster. Now, guys, there's been some news that's come out with this. Gustavo Santaolalla, I'm going to butcher that, I'm so sorry, Gustavo, who is the composer for The Last of Us, famously the composer. He reached out and confirmed basically in a Spanish interview that he likes seeing himself in the game. Yeah, he basically just confirmed really that Last of Us 2 is having like a remake or remaster. One of those two. I want to know your thoughts on it, guys. We had, when The Last of Us 1 remake was announced, we had a very heated conversation about that, about how it didn't need to exist, etc. and so on. How do we feel about Last of Us 2? Spence, as the biggest Last of Us fan I know, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, my friend, correct you are. I am the biggest Last of Us fan the world has ever known. Probably not, but I'm definitely up there as one of the favourites of this franchise. I remember when we first discussed Last of Us Part 1, and everyone was kind of like, oh, this doesn't need to be made. Last of Us already got a remaster on the PS4. And I was like, yeah, it's a fair point. It is a fair point. But irrelevant to the fact it didn't need to exist, I was appreciative that it does exist, because I'm such a fanboy and I'll play it again, and I have, and I've beaten it and I adore it. And it is the definitive way to play that game, because it is stunning. Absolutely stunning. Probably the most beautiful game I've played on the PS5. It is beautiful. I remember when we first discussed that topic that I said, lads, let's be honest, they're going to milk this franchise. Last of Us Part 2 is going to get a director's cut to PS5, and then they're going to do Last of Us Part 3. I said this. They're going to get everything on level with each other and create the definitive way to play these games. It's just happening. I was just right. It's a rare King Spencer dub moment. I decreed it, and it came to be. It's the way it goes. It's not going to be a full remake or anything like that. It will be a director's cut, I feel. I feel like they won't call it a director's cut because they want it to be the definitive way. I feel like they're just going to rename it the same thing, Last of Us Part 2, but for PS5. I do think they'll just stick with that title, but it will be the definitive way to play the game. And as long as it has all the core mechanics and it's the exact same game, then it's going to be a gangbuster. I'm going to adore it. And although the internet might shit on it, because they shat on the original Last of Us Part 2. And I feel like it's probably not going to sell as well as Part 1 remake, or sell as well as probably the original Part 2 as well. I do still think it's going to be worth the making, and it's going to be a good link to factions. And I'm just excited to see it. I'm 100% buying it day one, should it come to light. And from what this composer said, which is pretty heavy, him saying, oh, in the new game, you can actually come up to me and request songs. Come on, mate. It's like the judge in the Activision case. It's such a blatant thing, saying, oh, it's definitely happening then. They've even told you that you're doing this. He's like, yeah, 100%. Yeah, coming out November, or whatever he's saying. He's probably got the date. Absolutely outrageous. I'm keen for it because I adore this franchise, but I don't think it needs to exist the same as Part 1 didn't. But I'm appreciative that they're still going to do it.
Thank you for that, Spence. What about yourself, Mr. Hoy?
I'm just shocked something we said on the podcast came true. So congratulations, King's fans, predicting this and it actually coming into light. Well, actually, I kind of feel like it was a bit of a no-brainer. We always knew that we were going to get new versions, remasters, remakes of The Last of Us 2. And as you said, Spence, we are just going to be milking this franchise dry. And after the success of the Netflix special that we got, the Netflix series of The Last of Us, it was obvious. They've just probably sped up the development a little bit more here because people wanted to see it. People want more Last of Us, and this is what they got to give us. They're not going to give us factions just yet. We're not getting into a Last of Us 3 situation. They're just going to give us a Last of Us 2 so people can spend a bit more money and play the game, which personally, and I think around you guys, we hold this game in high regard. We like it a lot. But the best part of this story, and the thing that always makes me giggle, is how we find out about these new games that are coming up. Everyone at Naughty Dog would have been sworn to secrecy. There would be, documents signed up the wazoo. They would be all up in the legal. They would be signing their lives away. Not to mention that this is happening. And then just some lad, he's just like, yeah, it's happening. It's just brilliant. I love it. That's the part of the story that I enjoyed the most. I think it was an obvious thing that was always going to happen. And it's kind of a no-brainer that it's happening now just because it's at an all-time high, the series, and everyone loves it. So, of course, it's going to happen on PS5. Of course.
I think you guys are right on this. I really do. It's one of those things now that when the first one was announced to get this remake treatment, I was so anti it. And I think rightly so. I don't think it does need to exist in any way, shape, or form. It didn't improve the gameplay, as you stated a couple of times, Spence. So what's the fucking point in it existing, right? But the precedent's been set now. And so whenever it happens again, it's not really a surprise. So I'm not going to feel as negative as I did all the way back then. The question is it going to be a director's cut or a remake? Now, for my money, I'd prefer it to be a full-blown remake. I really would. If they're going to do it, go ham on it now. You know, if you're going to milk it one more time, you might as well give it that full, like, next-gen treatment. Like you were saying, Spence, that The Last of Us 1 is, like, the prettiest game you've seen on PlayStation 5, right? So, The Last of Us 2, it does play better than the original in every conceivable way. So, getting it to look better as well, I mean, it's there. I mean, will I buy it is the big question I'm asking myself. And I honestly don't know. Because I prefer The Last of Us 2 to the first one. I do. And I think that I've only played it through twice, whereas I played the original one through fucking countless times. I might end up going back. I've been craving going back and playing the second one. And I got no real craving to replay the first one at the moment. I want to be able to sneak through those moments where you're in the forest and all that stuff. I want to do all that again. 70 quid though, it's a big old ask. I think for me, it's going to be one of those ones that is going to release. I'm going to feel kind of indifferent on it. As you said, it's going to kick up a whole shitstorm of complaints on Twitter again for a whole other time. And then maybe in 3 or 4 years, I'll end up picking it up. But right now, I don't know. Maybe just before The Last of Us 3, whenever that eventually does come round, that would be the time that I'll think, right, I'll pick up The Last of Us 2 remake and I'll borrow your Last of Us 1. And that would probably be the time for me. But I don't see the point in a director's cut at this point. I think if they're going to do it, they're going to go the whole hog on it and just do a full-blown remake on it. I really don't see why they'd bother just upscaling it just to 4K. If you do that, you got to charge 10 quid. Whereas if they do a remake on it, they can charge 70. And I think it's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's a lot more work though, a remake.
Yeah.
A director's cut is already set in stone. They just up-res the textures, which were probably already in 4K that they just lowered to fit PS4 and PS4 Pro. It's probably ready to go in director's cut already. And if it's £10 upgrade, you chuck your disc in, you're going to buy it. I'm going to buy it. Everyone's going to buy it. I'll buy a new copy. But most people are just going to do the £10 upgrade. And I wouldn't blame them at all. Because why not? It's a tenner to experience that game in 4K 60, beautiful ray tracing. And it's already, that PS4 version is already more beautiful than most PS5 games. It is stunning. So imagine it in 4K ray tracing. It would be insane.
Do you really think, though, this remake, remaster, reimagining, however we're going to go, is really for us? Because we've only just played the game on PS4. Do you really feel like this game is for us? I don't. I feel like this is for the new fans that they would have got because the IP is growing. You know, the people on Twitter, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. The amount of people talking about the series, the IP, as I said, is massive these days. It's in the public consciousness now because it's had the Netflix treatment. And I think it's for those people to play it because people aren't going back, buying a PS4 to then play this game. No, they want a big shiny console. They want their PS5 and now they want to play The Last of Us 2 to find out what happens next. Because if all you've watched is the Netflix series, you want to know what's next. It's left on a cliffhanger. There's loads of questions you need answered. So of course you're going to want to play this game. And personally, I think it's for that customer base rather than the hardcore fans, which I probably would deem us.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. The HBO show brought a lot of people in, And a lot of people, like, fan of the show, Joseph Thomas, he's someone that hadn't played The Last of Us, right? And so he watched the show. And it's for someone like that who hasn't played it, they've been holding off the experience for whatever reason, and now they get a chance to be able to go in. Or, like, if I bought my dad for Christmas a PlayStation 5, I'd buy The Last of Us remake. Of course I would. And you're right, I suppose it is for that and for the mega fans, rather than just average Joe Blogs who played it only a couple of years ago. You are right, but I don't know. I mean, it just goes back to the same thing that I've been touting off and repeating myself from when we talked about The Last of Us here, but what a waste of fucking talent. To have Naughty Dog just doing this and just polishing up their older games that aren't even old. You know, like, Last of Us was already a stretch, a late PS3 game. This is like the last big game on PlayStation 4. And they're working on this. Even if it is a director's cut and all they gotta do is just copy, paste, type in 4K in the assets, and Bob's your uncle, right? I don't know how the hell it works.
That's wild.
Even if they gotta just do that. Why? When they could be working on something else. When they could just have, like, everyone on deck, all hands on deck to get factions out the door. It's just such a waste of time. When it's not really needed. If they held their fire with this, and this came out in 10, 15 years, something like that, there would be so much hype to go back and replay it. Same with The Last of Us 1. If it was 10 years on from now, people would be like, oh my god. Like, people are talking about Tumba. Tumba's back, oh my god. If it was like that kind of time scale, people would be hyped. But it's not, because it's literally like from 3 years ago. Just such a fucking waste of time as far as I'm concerned.
I think it goes back to Phil's point about the HBO show, the Now TV show, where, sure, they released Last of Us Part 1 just prior to that show launching. And then when that show launched, Last of Us Part 1 was top of the charts. Throughout the duration of that show releasing, it was top of the charts. It was bestseller for like 2 months, maybe. It was doing really good. It did well on launch anyway because it's Last of Us. But then when it fizzled, the show came out, it did again. They're doing season 2 of the show. So they're just going to time this release, probably the same window, just before it, let it get the initial sales. Then when it starts to fizzle, guess what? Season 2 of the show's coming out, and then bang, it's straight back to the top of the charts, and they're making all their money. It makes no sense for them not to do this. It's a money printing machine, Last of Us. They'd be stupid not to do it. And I'm going to buy the show season 2 on 4K Blu-ray Steelbook as well. I'm going to buy a collector's edition of Director's Cut Remake Part 2. It doesn't matter. It's just, why not? And then there's probably not even their main team even doing it. It's just a remake. Last of Us Part 1 launched on PC with bugs galore. It's also a great excuse to get Last of Us Part 2 on PC and expand to that audience. So chances are that's another advantage they're trying to get a bit of. So who knows?
Absolutely stellar point there. The PC market. And a slight correction, I've been saying Netflix all fucking night. It's HBO series. Excuse me on that one. I don't need the comments, but obviously the comments are great for us because the more comments, the higher the video gets rated. So please roast me. It is HBO series, not Netflix. But no, PC market, great point there, Spence. I think bringing it over and making it more accessible in more places and having this IP available now on PC, incredible. It's the right time to be doing it. I can totally agree with just up-resing it. I don't agree with Davey with the whole remake situation because they just haven't got the time. They need to act now, and it's the best period to do it, as I've been saying all night. They've just had the not Netflix show, the HBO show out. It's in the public consciousness. Capitalize on it and get it on as many platforms as possible, really. And if PC market is doing well with the first one, it's just a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, all cards on the table here. I totally agree with both of you guys. I think you're totally right that it does make perfect sense to do this. Am I happy about it ultimately? No. Am I interested in it? Really? Not really, in any way, shape, or form. But as you said, it's not for us. It's not for me. It really isn't. No. And I think both of you are totally bang on. Audience, I would love to hear from you, though. Let us know right in the comments section or write into the email pswetrust@gmail.com or reach out to us on the socials and we can pick it up in episode 72.